Ooh, that blasted their ears. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Adam Green here with No More News. Thank you for joining me today, Tuesday, March 10th, 2026. First-time guest on the show, Jeff from Western Alliance Resistance Podcast. Been wanting to have him on for quite a while to talk about he seems to specialize in like the Russia disinformation, covering Russia propaganda stuff. So he is here. What's up, Jeff? Where do you want to get started today? Oh, there goes
thanks for having me. Good to be here. The first time I saw your streams or your content was actually back when you did Christopher Bolin interviews. So it's a long time ago.
Way back. Yeah, cool.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the thumbnail, where do we even begin with the Russian influence? It seems like almost every prominent person like in the anti-war, anti-Zionist, JQ, whatever you want to call it, geopolitical sphere, Tucker, Candace, Alex Jones, Zhang now, like,
yeah,
how can you not see this?
These biggest anti-Israel proponents tend to be very pro-Kremlin, don't they?
And then there's like the faction of like Max Blumenthal, Scott Ritter, Judge Napolitano, Jeffrey Sachs, Colonel McGregor. I'm sure I'm forgetting a bunch more, but it just seems like
it's a massive network. Yeah.
George Galloway, Jimmy Dore. None of these people even deny being pro-Russia. Stu Peters, another one's had Dugin on a bunch.
Yeah, he had Dugin on, kissing his ass all the time. It's really ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, when I started out quite a while back, I actually started out with a video compilation called In the Name of Zion, which actually features some of your stuff as well. And back then, I did focus almost entirely on Israel and how Israel was established, as the name suggests. But man, when when the Ukraine war started and I started becoming active on X, I started to realize that Russian propaganda is way bigger than pro-Israeli propaganda. It's mind-blowing how it's really everywhere. And it's at least a lot more covert than the Israelis ones, where, you have all these very obvious people like Ben Shapiro, Laura Loomer, Rebel Media and stuff. But this pro-Russia network is really, really big.
It's almost like that's the both sides. If you're anti-Israel, anti-Jewish, anti-Zionist, you're basically the leading opposition to that is all like very pro-Russia and promoting like Christian Muslim alliance and like kind of low IQ peasant anti-Semitism that's like discrediting and makes them look bad and plays the perfect Christian Muslim opposition. Right. Like I always point out the Christian Muslim alliance thing. Is this not pushed by all these types?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it is always like you have Kevin McDonald and David Duke, for example, as well. And I know you have Brother Nathaniel on as well, who actually admitted on your stream that he has friends in the FSB, which is pretty funny. But yeah, they always talk about, basically the entire world is run by Jews except for Russia, right? And Putin kicked out all the Jewish oligarchs, which is absolutely not true. He had some issues with 3 of them, and that's it, which is Berezovsky, Guzinski, and Khodorkovsky. And what about all the other Jewish, Israeli, Russian oligarchs that he did not kick out? Because there's still plenty of them left.
Yeah, Chabad for the most part, right? I've been the one to put out some of these rabbi clips talking about how much there's no anti-Semitism in Russia, and the Jews love Russia, and Putin loves the Jews, and how Chabad has like all the total influence over in Russia within Jewry. So, but yeah, you were talking about how you used to focus on the Israel stuff, and then you kind of realize like, RT is actually kind of like leading the charge in a lot of these influencers against, in this dichotomy. And it was Johnny Gat videos, which kind of opened my eyes to a lot of the stuff that was going on. Right. I figured it was.
Yes. Yeah, well, that's the issue, right? Like, I still focus on Israel. I know people see me as a Russia exposer,
Mhm.
which, is kind of valid, but I try to focus on all propaganda that is anti West, right? Which certainly includes, featuring Ben Shapiro sometimes as well. But, again, the Israeli stuff to me, it doesn't seem as big as the Russia stuff, especially when a lot of this focus, like you have Alex Jones there, for example.
Mhm.
Like he was always like from the very beginning. Like you can go back to archive.org, go to infowars.com,
Mhm.
and see the headlines from the late 90s where it's all anti-NATO propaganda.
Mhm.
Like this guy, I know people called him out for kind of like being an Israel apologist, which he certainly was, even though he's kind of, you know, playing with becoming a bit more anti-Israel, it seems.
Mhm.
But his main focus has always been, he's very much pro multipolar world order. He
Mhm.
has been on RT many times, featured many RT articles. He has been, he had these headlines: NATO kills kids and NATO ally Bin Laden and stuff like that. And he always
NATO false
jokes.
flag. This is a NATO. It's a NATO false flag in Russia. I remember them all pushing that really hard. One of the
Oh
shootings that
yeah,
happened at the theater or something.
yeah. I mean, that's a good example because when that happened, you notice that almost all these guys were always very critical of Israel, and I am too. A lot of people have very valid criticism of Israel and
Mm-hmm.
their influence on the West, especially the U.S., of course. But the problem becomes is when things like that happen, they put down these polls like where people can vote, like, oh, who was behind this concert hall shooting? Was it Mossad, the CIA, or ISIS? What about the FSB? Like, it happens in Moscow. The police didn't even respond to it for like an hour, despite their cameras being turned off. And, the police was there all around it. Like, there are many police stations nearby that didn't respond. Like, how is this a CIA operation or a Mossad operation? I mean, even if it is, why not even pretend, give a little thought that maybe it was the FSB, but they don't even consider it.
Yeah, Jones rules out the idea. Everybody else will do false flags, but Putin would never. When it's actually pretty likely he bombed his own apartment buildings, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, how he got into power was, this whole Muslim war on terror kind of thing is nothing new. He did exactly this with the Chechens. He so basically the FSB planted bombs in certain apartments, and local police actually caught some FSB agents doing this, or KGB, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, he blamed the Chechens, and then he started this whole war on Chechnya, and the rest of the Russian people were like, "Oh, look at this guy! He saves us from the evil Chechens, the evil Muslims, right?" And that's how he got into power. So they are really, they are not new to false flags either. And I completely agree that Mossad is, an organization that does this all the time as well. But again, why not the FSB as well? And like you said, the people who call out Russia for these things do not call out Israel for these things, and vice versa. Like it's always one or the other. And there are also people who, are super pro anti-Israel, but then also extremely pro-China, like Jackson Hinkle and Kim Iverson. That's also a whole different matter. But
Mm-hmm.
of course, Russia and China are very much allies. They always have been because, well, they have the same objective, which is to destroy the West.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what all of this narrative about like I've noticed the Charlie Kirk truther stuff is being pushed by a lot of like Jimmy Dore and Stu Peters, Candace Owens,
Yep.
while Dugan's cheering it along, and the Ball bank account and Ball runs the West. They're all satanic and demonic and antichrist. The
That's one of the
Epstein
dumbest
class, those
things
are
I've
those are
seen.
the latest smears, right? Satanic and Epstein and Ball. Even E. Michael Jones went mask off and tweeted an article from Dugin last week saying the West is like the nation of Baal or something, and he goes, Dugin's right. He says Dugin's right. It's the Judeo-Christian West too. They're not worshiping Baal. This is all misdirection. What do you think about this big Baal push that Dugin's got going on?
I think that's one of the dumbest things I've seen in a while, this Baal account thing that I know you covered as well. But of course, I mean, they do anything to demonize the West. And the Epstein files is another good example of people who, expose this whole thing and his Mossad connections, which, again, is very true, like Les Wexner, Iran-Contra, all these things. Yes. But what about all his Russian connections? They never mention this. Mm-hmm. Even though, if you really look into it, then you will notice that this is once again evidence that Israel and Russia, behind the scenes, Russian intelligence, Israeli intelligence, are working together to bring down the U.S. Mm-hmm. And now, of course, Dugin is like, oh, you see, that's also Khamenei rhetoric with the U.S. is great Satan. So the whole West is satanic. We are not, of course. So we are the saviors. Join the multipolar world order.
Mm-hmm. And it aligns with Kabbalist rabbis, too, that say Edom, the West, is evil and satanic, and that's where their Antichrist comes from in Judaism. So all the same narrative. It's evil, it's global homo, it's degenerate, it's the empire, the hegemonic empire, right? How about
exactly.
this, too?
I mean, it's funny how, all these rabbis that you always post, basically they think that, that's actually a question that I have. You have watched a lot of these rabbis. Do they ever talk about, negatively about China or Russia, for example?
They don't. They actually mostly praise Putin in Russia, if anything. I don't know. There's some critical rabbis of Putin, too. But the Orthodox and the Chabadniks seem to like him.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting to me because they certainly have a common enemy in the West, and the rabbis would say that we're all anti-Semites, or Amalek, whatever. And the Russians would say that we are all fascists. Now, what do you get when you merge anti-Semitism with fascism? You get evil Nazis, right? And then you have all this rhetoric of denazification of Ukraine and the entirety of the West, of course. Russia state media calls the entirety of Russia, the entirety of Europe Nazis all the time, and that they should just nuke Rotterdam, nuke Berlin, nuke Paris. Like these people are absolutely insane.
Good point. That's a good point. They are insane. And I always forget the guy's name, Vladimir something, the big broadcaster, pro-Putin broadcaster in Russia that
Soloviev.
Put on, what is it?
Soloviev,
yes. That's been on Alex Jones a bunch of times. Jones has a bunch of these, Dugin and that guy, and the arms dealer guy, Bouts, I think his name is. He's on there. And Alex has his Russian producer girl, I'm forgetting her name right now. It's off. Daria something, right?
Yep. Victor Bout. Yeah, this guy was, he's this weapons trader who knew that he was selling weapons to people that were going to use these weapons to kill Americans. He's selling these weapons to South Americans to kill Americans. And Alex is praising this guy.
Yeah, Dugin clearly is about destroying the West. Crazy pills. I didn't even realize that was on.
JK rage baiting. Keep it up, bro. You're saving the West.
Yeah, actually saving the West. I agree. Western Alliance. By the way, Jeff, are you a Christian?
No, I'm more of a deist.
Cool. I mean, I've seen you in the live chat. My understanding is you watch the show sometimes, so I was assuming you probably weren't. You're not going for the ortho bro. You're not in with the ortho bros or nothing. Here's Jones shilling.
I find them quite interesting, though. I do listen to them quite a bit. Like, I know you've had some problems with Jim Bob and stuff, but I find them quite funny.
Jim Bob's kind of funny.
Yes, yeah.
Dyer, Russian Orthodox Church Dyer,
yes,
who was working for a Russian think tank, hosting the 4th hour of InfoWars. What are your thoughts on Dyer? Always calling blaming everything on the CIA or like the Atlanticists, right? Or the British Empire. He blames Israel, the British Empire for Israel. That's the narrative him and Jones are always spinning.
Yeah, that's a very common talking point from all these people, right? I mean, Aleksandr Dugin does this as well, always talking about the Anglo-Saxons. And it's funny because Alex Jones said something very similar when he was on RT. He said, "We have the Anglo-American establishment based in England and the US that has enslaved our people, and they're using our wealth, our military, our name to carry out this globalist empire, this unipolar world, instead of having a multipolar world."
Jones said that on RT? Wow.
Yeah, he did. He did, yeah. And that was in 2008.
Yeah. And we forgot to mention Jackson Hinkle, too. He's one of the top acolytes in online that just seems to be just completely astroturfed or just boosted by third worldist anti-Western people. And now the same thing's happening with this Professor Zhang, too, which I actually had pinned several months ago. Look, I said December 19th, 2025. Looks like this guy predictive history may be in the Russia shill network, spouting the Zionism is not Judaism talking point, too. That's what they always do that, right? Have you noticed that?
Yes.
And they promote New Jakarta and Zionism's not Judaism, just running cover for Judaism.
Yes. Yeah, and a year ago already, if you look at his YouTube channel, he was already talking about, the decline and fall of the American empire, why the West is doomed, and when eschatologies converge. There it is. Mm-hmm. Is Putin the Ubermensch? He also has a whole lecture on that. And, another one, Putin's strategic imagination, Putin's war for the soul of Russia. I mean, it's pretty obvious. And of course, Dugin promotes this guy, and Syrian Girl as well, who is also one of these, Epstein exposers that never mention any of his Russian connections.
Or is Putin the Ubermensch? Like,
dude, that's the one, yeah.
Yeah, we're not making stuff up in our head here. He says Dugin's his favorite philosopher. I hear the decline and fall of the American empire, the fall of Edom, how empire is destroying America. Now he's teaming up with Sneeko and talking about all of our girls are on OnlyFans and we're an empire about to collapse and we're run by satanic secret societies, just like Jay Dyer and Jones. And they're all promoting like fallen angels, Bible shit. It's interdimensional demons and stuff. Ian Carroll's another one too. It seems to be.
Yeah, Ian Carroll was also at the Rage Against the War Machine rally. He was a speaker there, which is extremely pro-Kremlin, by the way. Everyone who's there, it's Douglas McGregor, all these same people. It's every time it's the same people. Tulsi Gabbard, Jeffrey Sachs, you name it.
So yeah, as soon as I saw this guy, it was immediately clear. Also, he's calling them Khazarians. The Khazarian thing seems to be pushed through a lot of this Russia faction as well.
Yeah, and that results in a lot of people believing that Ukraine is somehow the homeland of the Khazarians, and therefore the Jews need to take it back. And, Ukraine versus Russia is just, Jews versus Jews or whatever. I honestly am very confused by what they truly believe in that sense. I'm not sure if they even understand it, to be honest.
Dugin is aligning with the rabbis about destroying Edom, hyping the eschatology.
Russian-Israeli subversion program targeting West. Turn off your power plants, open the borders, cut your off and be trans or lesbian. Then pose as the savior with Putin and Jesus.
Yeah, they do portray Putin as a sort of a savior. Yeah, he's a white hat with Trump, taking out the Khazarian mafia, right? And Dugin sounds just like these rabbis and then says he loves Kabbalah. It's the greatest achievement of human spirit or some shit. What do you think that's about? He clearly knows.
He actually said that on Dutch national television, which is where I'm from, which is pretty funny. Yeah, he seems to be very much into mysticism in general, which of course includes Kabbalah, yeah.
Yeah, and like Aleister Crowley shit too. He's on video
Yeah.
reciting some of that shit.
Yes.
Not to mention, I've long believed that QAnon was some Israeli-Russian type of psyop, Operation Trust, like in Golitsyn's book, Anatoly
Absolutely.
Golitsyn. It's Operation Trust, trust the plan, the white hats are in control, Putin's a white hat, they're taking down the deep state and the satanic pedophile cabal, right? Now, that aligns perfectly with their ball worshippers. It's the Epstein class. You know, Putin's trad Russia and fighting against. But they always Putin in RT always seems to like blame America for being controlled by Zionist and Israeli influences.
Yes. Yeah, so that's the big secret here, I think. So even in quite a while back, Yuri Andropov, I'm sure you've heard of this if you know Johnny Gat's work, but he also talked about Operation Sig, right? How Yuri Andropov, who was Jewish himself, he was a chairman of the KGB in 67 to 82. And according to a book called Disinformation, which is by a Romanian defector, he says Andropov's disinformation machinery was working the clock to persuade the Islamic world that Israel and the US intended to transform the rest of the world into a Zionist fiefdom. According to Andropov, the Islamic world was a petri dish in which the KGB community could nurture a virulent strain of America hatred, grown from the bacterium of Marxist-Leninist thought. And he pontificated that we should make them feel sick to their stomachs, just thinking about that Council of the Elders of Zion, in which case he meant the US Congress. Which is really funny because, you know, of course, they really promote this fact that either, you know, US is completely dominated by Israel, even though, you know, and there is some truth to it, which is why it's so effective to put out this kind of information. But it kind of masks the fact that Russia is also heavily influencing US politics, US foreign policy in particular. And you can really see that with Donald Trump, of course, with, and I'm sure we'll get into Iran and stuff. But, you know, the big thing here is that what if Israel is way more loyal to Russia than it is to the United States? And kind of, you know, that makes Israel a sort of like scapegoat in order to make the West seem like the bad guy for being responsible for all the Israeli wars and Israeli war crimes. Which again makes, you know, that's why Khamenei said Israel's little Satan, and the US, of course, is great Satan.
Absolutely, that's what they always do. They'll say Zionism's not Judaism, Israel's a proxy of the West. They'll say it's a white imperialistic colonialist project. They'll say it's not Judaism, it's white supremacy. They'll say Zionism is secular and it's these Christian Zionists that wanted them to go there so that they can have an apocalypse. It's always, even RT and Putin will say it's like the worst is America. Like they blame America for what's happening in Gaza more so than even Judaism or Netanyahu, right?
Exactly. Yes. And I think that is really the key that makes, you know, geopolitics make sense. Because even the very first prime minister of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, was born in the Russian Empire, literally said, I am a Bolshevik, and promoted something extremely similar to the multipolar world order with a Supreme Court of Mankind in Israel. And 12 of the 14, I believe, prime ministers of Israel were either born in the Russian Empire or their parents were. And I believe only Naftali Bennett and Lapid are somewhat exceptions, but that's because they are just the most recent ones.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I just played a clip the other day when Spencer was on of Miko Peled on RT, and he was saying it was white supremacy. He was blaming white supremacy for Israel. And that reminded me also, I saw a clip the other day of Abby Martin, who's like one of the leading anti-Israel voices online. She used to have a show on RT, Abby Martin, a clip of her husband saying that he is a Marxist-Leninist.
Well, there you go.
And Gat had a video on him back in the day, I remember also, and I just saw another clip of it the other day.
Yeah, and people like Ben Norton say the same thing, right? That, when he talk about Israel, they're like, oh, these stupid white supremacists and stuff. Like, are you guys serious? Like, even, do you think Israelis consider themselves to be, white? Yeah, even though they have these songs like, I'm not white, I'm Jewish and stuff like that.
People have always told me, I'd say, no, Putin's allied with Russia. And they go, no, he would never support Assad in Syria if he was pro-Israel and a Zionist. Or Putin's allied with Iran, but he allowed Assad to fall, didn't do anything to stop it. Israel and Mossad was okay with having, Mossad was having okay with Assad being in power also with some of their policies. And now it looks like he's not doing anything really to interject in Iran also. So... And he said that he wouldn't help because there's so many Russians in Israel.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's tons of them, like from the very beginning. I mean, even the Mitrokin archives, I don't know if you've ever read those, but that also exposed that the top political and military echelons of Israel were just full of KGB people, including members of the Knesset. And there's actually a pretty good article as well by an Israeli writer who wrote an article called Israel's Former Soviet Immigrants Transform Adopted Country. How Russian-speaking Jews who arrived over the past 20 years have integrated little, but influenced everything from culture to politics. And then at the end of the article, she says, for many years, the joke was that Israel had become the 51st state of the US. Instead, we have just become another Soviet republic. It's quite a twist in the story. Yeah. It is.
And with a lot of that Russian immigration into Israel, that would include the Orthodox Jews and Hasidics from Ukraine and Russia.
For sure. Yes. I mean, even Netanyahu's son, he said, most of my friends are Israelis who were born in Russia. The immigration from the Soviet Union is among the glorious immigrations that have been here. And then he talks about the absolute majority of immigrants from the USSR are members of the national camp, and of those, most vote for Likud. Likud is the natural home of Israelis from the USSR. Well, I mean, that's pretty obvious because, Netanyahu is, of course, big friends with Putin, joined him with the parade for the victory over the evil Nazis as well, of course, the evil Germans. I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, the Russians really hate Germanic people in general. Slavic people, not so much, because they kind of want to appeal to them because, Russia is ruled by Slavic people, so you should just join us instead of these evil Westerners. But yeah, especially the Anglo-Saxons, who are also Germanic people, of course.
Mm-hmm. Interesting enough, too, that Epstein said that Dugin, Putin's advisor, was interesting and perhaps quite useful.
Yes.
Isn't that crazy?
Dave Troy actually does a lot of good work, but yeah, that is crazy.
What did you say? Troy does good?
Oh, Dave Troy, the guy who Spencer is posting here.
Oh, that's who this is. Oh, I got you. Dave Troy. Okay, I don't know if I follow him. Dave Troy. Okay.
Well, honestly, he's one of those guys, again, who does excellent work on Russia, but then, he doesn't want to talk about Israel because anti-Semitism, whatever. Yeah, which is really a shame. It's really a shame. Because this is really the missing piece here that people just do not want to tie together.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And also, do you have anything for us about Epstein's relationship with Putin or Russians in the files? Because all like the pro-Russia people were like, oh, they're trying to deflect away from Israel, and he was an Israeli agent, nothing to do with Russia. That's a lie, like Russian collusion hoax type of stuff. But it's like, why they're just like covering up that there is we're not covering up that obviously there's tons of Israeli connections also, clearly. Yes. But then to just sweep for the Russia connections, what are your thoughts on Russia and the files?
Well, I have a lot of notes on that because it is a long story. And yes, like you said, a lot of these pro-Kremlin types, they never address any of the Russian connections. And it's funny because I've heard almost all of them say, if Epstein was working with Russia, then why did he need a visa? Like they won't even address any of the information. They're like, this is their talking point. But how about maybe because all US citizens need one, and exemptions only apply to government personnel or those with special status, which Epstein obviously didn't hold publicly. I mean, how dumb do they think these people are exactly? I mean, imagine the trail of evidence that that would leave behind if he was exempt from getting a visa.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good.
Yeah, exactly. But yes, it's funny because the main experts, so-called experts on Epstein, are Whitney Webb, Dawson, and Syrian girl somewhat as well, who honestly do a pretty good job at talking about the Israeli connections. I don't really disagree with them, but the problem becomes is that they do brush off all the Russian connections, and I think it's no coincidence that these people are doing that. Anyway, so first of all, Jeffrey Epstein flew to Russia multiple times in 2002 on his Boeing with Ghislaine Maxwell and Sarah Palin. Now, he was known to be in contact with Sergei Belyakov, who was trained by the FSB and a former Russian deputy minister running influence operations from inside the government. So basically, Epstein recruited high-profile people for his St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, which included VIPs like Microsoft's CTO, the co-founder of LinkedIn, Thomas Pritzker, and Ehud Barak, who was then the only one who went, I think, and he also met with Sergei Lavrov when he was there. Now, there are also leaked Telegram chats where Epstein was asking Belyakov about a Russian girl from Moscow, which turned out to be Guzel Ganyeva, who was attempting to blackmail Epstein's buddy, Leon Black, who people now are talking about quite a bit as well. He's the former CEO of Apollo Global Management, who eventually paid her $9.5 million after she accused him of sexual assault and sadistic acts. Now, when Epstein asked for details on her, Belyakov immediately gave him a full profile on her, including how much money she had and everything. So clearly he has some connections in the FSB. Now, he met at least 5 times with this guy, and yeah, he was the guy who personally helped him get Russian visas and planned high-level Moscow meetings for him with people like Sergei Stochchak and central bank deputy chairman Alexei Simonovsky. But there's actually an even bigger link here, is that he also helped getting US visas for his assistant, who was a Russian, Svetlana Podshideva, who has been photographed with him multiple times, also at Epstein Island with Prince Andrew, or at least when he visited. Now, she's a pretty interesting figure because she was educated at the Moscow State Institute of International Relations, which is kind of dubbed to be like the Harvard of Russia by Henry Kissinger, actually, because of how many of Russia's political and financial elite have been trained there. So she graduated summa cum laude and speaks 5 languages fluently. So what do you do when you have academic credentials like that? So instead of becoming like Russia's, foreign minister or something other prestigious position, you of course become a model and assistant for sex traffickers, right? Because she didn't just work for Epstein. It's funny because she also worked for Jean-Luc Brunel before that in France. Now, this guy worked with Epstein as well and with Ghislaine, and was also accused of sexual assault and grooming young females. It's a very similar story. So this guy was arrested in December 2020, and well, guess what happened to him? He hanged himself in his cell before his trial could even proceed, right? Sounds pretty familiar. And it's funny because Whitney Webb does talk about Jean-Luc Brunel, but then she completely leaves out that this Svetlana was working with him and also with Epstein, even though she's a pretty interesting character here. And Epstein also donated a lot of money to her for women's rights organizations that she was involved with. And
what's the woman's name again? Svetlana? I want to look at her. Svetlana Yevgeneva?
No, Pachideva.
Oh, boy. P-O-Z.
P-O-Z-H-I.
Okay, I see it.
D-A-E-V-A.
Jeffrey Epstein's Russian Connections Dossier.Center. This young girl? Was Russian model. Here we go. Daily Wire.
The brunette. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Hold on. Messed up. Wrong button here. Was Russian model linked to sex? God, dude, these ads on Daily Mail. Was Russian model linked to sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein in his New York lair at the same time as Prince Andrew leaving Manhattan home? Not bad.
So she speaks 5 languages. Graduates summa cum laude from, the Harvard of Russia, supposedly. And then starts working for 2 different sex traffickers who both hanged themselves in prison, supposedly.
Well,
a little strange.
I never seen this girl before, but she's pretty. I could see her. She's probably Russian agents, man. What's the movie with the one actress from Hunger Games? Man, I'm not remembering anything today. What's the movie with the young actress about the Russian agent?
I'm not sure, actually.
Oh my gosh, you haven't. It'll come to me in a second. All right, so Russian. This wasn't the one that was blackmailing Leon Black, is it?
$5.
Red Sparrow.
No.
Bill Gates was affiliated with known Russian agent.
Right. The Bill Gates had some Russian girls involved too, Russian prostitutes, right?
Yeah, he got STDs from Russian girls, apparently. Yeah, and another thing is that Epstein's publicist was Masha Drakova, who is the author of Putin's Kiss, which is a book that goes into her experiences with being part of a pro-Putin anti-fascist youth organization.
All right. Anything else important in the Epstein files you want to tell us about before we move on to?
Well, I mean,
like the Iran war.
Maxwell also had a Russian boyfriend, which is also kind of weird. His name was Umar Jabrailov. Yeah, these names are pretty difficult sometimes. I mean, he also, talked about Putin over 1,000 times in the documents that were released. He said that the next true global currency should be the Russian ruble. He laundered like tons of money in many Russian banks. Like, it seems to me that this is pretty important information to mention if you want to call yourself an Epstein expert.
Mm-hmm. All right, I want to ask you about, isn't it crazy? I noticed that all of the pro-Russia sphere was all backing Trump before the election and going along with the bullshit that he's not going to start any more wars and that he's the peace candidate and he's going to prevent World War III. Tulsi Gabbard's a big one that comes to mind that's even in the cabinet that went along with that line. You have any thoughts on that? How they are all wrong about, and now they're leading the opposition to Trump in the Iran war right now and apparently lying about Israel taking all this damage and Iran winning, and Professor Zhang is predicting Iran's going to win, and I'm seeing McGregor and all these guys. Ritter, they're all running with the line that Khamenei sacrificed himself to mobilize the Muslim world against the West for the final battle and some shit, and they're waiting on the Mahdi, and Dugin's egging on the prophecies, and Sneako's Dajjal tweets. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think the latter. I think they do that to make it seem as if Trump is some kind of based anti-Eurasianist crusader or something. And I think they all promoted him because, again, his foreign policy, right? Like, he is extremely anti-Europe. I mean, that's just how it is, which is very unfortunate. Like, before he got elected, I made quite a few shows on Trump and how he's very anti-NATO. His rhetoric is all very much aligned with what the Kremlin would want someone in his position to say. And I actually know someone who is a sort of a Russian defector. I mean, he's more like a refugee, really, political refugee. But he said to me, like, well, if Trump would be working with the Russians, then I think they would probably suicide him by now because he is too pro-Kremlin. They would never allow an actual agent to act like the way he does. But yeah, I mean, I was certainly no fan of Khamenei either, with his Mark Bar America and US is great Satan and stuff. And, you know, he was very supportive of movements like BLM, saying America's racist, just like Mahmoud Abbas and even Putin himself, always talking about how America was founded on genocide and all this woke-tard nonsense. But the problem is, knowing what we know about Trump, his connections, and therefore likely his motives, and perhaps even his true objectives, that we kind of have to assume the worst here. And if the US is active in the Middle East, they're not going to be active in Europe, which benefits Russia. And I mean, not just the US, even European countries like France, UK, I believe Lithuania, even, and Germany have said that they would potentially get involved. Even NATO as a whole, potentially, which Mark Rutte was alluding to, who is the director of NATO now, who used to be the prime minister of the Netherlands. So, yeah, I think there's very good reasons why Russia is at least pretending to sit back and let it happen. I think they welcome it with open arms, if anything, because, you know, I think they're going to make sure this war drags out as long as they can to weaken both the US and Europe as much as possible. Now, I don't think Iran is going to win, but at what cost? That is really the question here. And reports already came out that Russian intelligence is actually assisting Iranian intelligence to help them locate Americans to kill them, which Trump, of course, completely denies is happening, even though even Witkoff, who is super, you know, friendly with the Russians, doesn't even deny that. So, yeah, a big problem here is that Europe is heavily dependent on both Iranian and Russian oil, of course, and oil prices have skyrocketed, even though they have gone down somewhat due to Trump saying that the US will take over the Strait of Hormuz or something. And the G7 nations are considering to tap into the emergency reserves, which is also definitely not a positive thing, of course. And Putin today, actually, or yesterday, said he was considering halting all energy supplies to Europe, which will be a massive blow, of course. And to put the cherry on top of the cake, Trump said today that he's canceling sanctions against countries buying Russian oil, which will add nicely to Russia's war chest to fight Europe with, of course. And those countries are mostly China and India, really, which are BRICS countries. I mean, if Trump really did this to help Ukraine, which he doesn't, because he stopped all aid to Ukraine, like the only tidbits that did go to Ukraine eventually were, from things that the Biden admin promised him. But if he did, or to be anti-Eurasia in general, one of the first things he did after bombing Iran wouldn't have been to trash talk Zelensky, as he always does, for supposedly depleting the ammunition stocks of the U.S. I mean,
he called him P.T. Barnum. He called him P.T. Barnum.
Yeah, and I mean, you see the same with J.D. Vance and all these people. They're always talking trash about Zelensky, never a bad word about Putin. It's always that, the Ukraine war, of course, the reason why it's still going is because Zelensky doesn't want peace, even though it's not a peace plan that they're offering. It's a surrender plan, right? It's beyond obvious. And he also spoke badly of Spain immediately for not wanting the U.S. to use the military bases in that country, followed by him threatening to march into Spain anyway. Like, who does this kind of thing if they're actually pro-NATO, pro-Europe? I mean, an actual pro-NATO candidate would stand 100% behind Europe, would arm Ukraine to the teeth so they could absolutely obliterate Russia, but that's not happening. And Tulsi Gabbard and all these, anti-war types, they're only anti-war when when it's the West waging war on something, but when Russia or China are doing it, it's completely fine. And she's like, oh, yeah, Zelensky just wants to keep this war going. We need to stop arming them so we can end the war. Yeah, if you stop arming them, Russia wins, which is exactly what she wants, of course. But really, there is only one way this stops. Either Ukraine wins or Ukraine loses. And the reason why I focus on this so much is because people need to understand that the Russians want the entirety of Europe. And if Ukraine goes down, then it's going to be Europe against Ukraine plus Russia. And Ukraine is going to be very angry at the West for letting that happen. And history has shown that the Ukrainians are pretty fierce warriors, which, they are definitely showing now as well. And if Trump gets what he wants, which really is to cut the America off of NATO, then Europe is going to be in massive trouble. And if Europe goes down, well, good luck to the United States to fight basically against the entire world on its own, which is why people like Dugin are promoting and actually like glorifying everyone who promotes isolationism in the US, because the US is never going to survive this when they're going to have to take on basically the entire world. I mean, Africa, this is also something people don't really discuss, but Africa is slowly completely being taken over by Russia and China, right? All the Western influence is being kicked out. And that's why you see people like Jackson Hinkle constantly praising leaders like this guy from Burkina Faso, right? Because he's super pro-Russia, of course. But another thing of this Iran war that's potentially going to be really bad is that there might be a lot more migrants going to Europe, which will result in, more European/Western hating people in Europe, which will then turn into more opportunities for far-right parties to rise to power in Europe. Now, that may sound good. Like, I'm very much, quote-unquote far-right myself and a very proud European. But the problem is once you realize that all these far-right European parties are all a bunch of pro-Kremlin shills, especially parties like the AfD in Germany, which is also promoted heavily by Elon Musk and by Vance and stuff. But, that's...
Tommy Robinson or this Jake Lang guy come to mind as well. They're really pushing the clash and the war between Christianity and Islam as well.
Yeah, and it's really problematic because, and that's kind of funny because Hegseth actually came out saying that they'd be ready for potential attacks by sleeper cells, which is interesting because I remember Stanislav Lunev, who is the highest ranking GRU officer to ever defect from Russia to the United States. He said to Jeff Nyquist in 1998, before 9/11, that if such things were to happen and Arab terrorists would be blamed, he said, don't believe them. It was my people. It was Russia. Viktor Suvorov, a former GRU officer, said something very similar already back in 87 in his book Spetsnaz. And I mean, this would give a really good pretext for that, wouldn't it? All kinds of Islamic attacks on Western soil from within. And now a U.S. embassy was already attacked in Norway. And yesterday, you also had the Gracie Mansion bomb attempt, which, they suspect or they claim that ISIS was behind that. I suspect there's going to be a lot more of that happening soon. And then there's, of course, the whole satanic West thing and, Israel's little Satan, U.S. great Satan. And now they've basically given that saying much more credence.
Yeah, I think it's almost inevitable that at some point there's going to be some Muslim terrorist attacks in Western nations, and also maybe anti-Semitic attacks on synagogues and Jews at the same time. So a combination of those two, what do you think that is going to result in? What type of climate amongst the West? Meanwhile, when we're in this war, possible apocalyptic wars with Russia and Iran and China, and I was going to say also, all the anti-war people, they're all anti-war, like you said, only when it comes to Ukraine. That's why they were saying Trump is the peace candidate, because he's promising to get in and end the war in Ukraine on day one, which obviously hasn't happened. And interesting enough that Jared Kushner is back now doing negotiations in Russia with Putin. Isn't that something? For all the people that said he wouldn't be back. And about the Trump NATO thing, like, yeah, he's always talking about that they're not paying their fair share and threatening them and saying that they need us to defend them and talking all this shit. But how about the Greenland thing? I saw Putin encouraging Trump doing his Greenland push, which was, causing a rift with NATO as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the U.S. already has military bases in Greenland and is a part of NATO. So unless you're planning on leaving NATO, what is the point of all this? And he also said, he's kind of like, teasing them, of course, like, oh, Greenland's defense is 2 dog sleds, and that the U.S. is talking about acquiring, not leasing the country. And then, of course, he says, if we don't, Russia or China will. Now, there was also Greenland's prime minister, Jens Frederik Nielsen. He said that Greenland will not be governed by the United States. Greenland will not be part of the United States. So I don't know if this, if he is actually serious about this, or that he really just tries to, create more chaos within the upper echelons of NATO.
So here's another question. So Trump's like talking about taking Greenland because we might need it in a war with Russia and just to have, superiority in the North Pole. And then he took Venezuela, and now he's threatening Cuba. And now Iran, like, aren't all of these moves kind of being sold on the idea that, like, we have to do them to retain our hegemony and to, if we don't do it, Russia and China and will? So, like, how does this benefit them for Trump to do all these moves that seem to be, like, pro-America against Russia and China? Or is this just, like, part of the escalation before the destruction or the rug pull or something? You have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, the Venezuela thing, it seems that Dugin had absolutely no issue with this, because he is actually very happy with the U.S. having its Monroe Doctrine, and then they will have their hemisphere, and then America can have the Americas, and then they will not be interfering with anything that Russia wants to do anymore. Well, Greenland would be a part of that Monroe Doctrine, wouldn't it? And it's funny because, we already just spoke about what the dark motives of Iran potentially could be, which, I'm afraid that is what it is. I mean, like I said, knowing what we know about Trump, we kind of have to assume the worst. I mean, it's better to assume the worst than trust the plan, if you ask me.
It's worked for me all along with Trump.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In 2019, for example, Fiona Hill, who specializes in Russian and European affairs, said that as the U.S. was so concerned about the Monroe Doctrine on its own backyard, perhaps the U.S. might also be concerned about developments in Russia's backyard, as in Ukraine, making it very obvious that they were trying to set up some kind of, let's say, you stay out of Ukraine or you move out of Ukraine, and, we'll rethink where we are with Venezuela. In other words, the U.S. would get Venezuela, Russia gets Ukraine. And Dave Troy, speaking of which, he said, the signals I'm hearing, which cannot be confirmed, are that Maduro's security, who were former Wagner people, which is true, collaborated with the U.S. military, and that Maduro has been offered, but not yet accepted, exile in Moscow. Big if true. Now, also, I'm sure it's just a coincidence that all this equipment from Russia and China that Venezuela had suddenly did not work, right? This was a pretty big talking point, but of course, Trump said that was because of a new weapon called the discombobulator or something. Discombobulator.
Yeah, discombobulator. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, speaking of Dugin and this Monroe Doctrine, this is what he said, which you can also trace back to all these, conservative and right-wing talking heads that promote all this isolationism. So he said, Dugin himself, it is particularly important to create geopolitical disorder in American domestic life by encouraging all kinds of separatism, various ethnic, social, and racial conflicts, actively supporting all dissident movements, and extremist, racist, and sectarian groups that destabilize internal political processes in the United States. At the same time, we support the isolationist tendencies of American politics and the theses of those circles, often right-wing Republicans, who believe that the United States should confine itself to its own internal problems. These tendencies are highly advantageous for us Russians, even if isolationism is implemented within the framework of the original version of the Monroe Doctrine, i.e., if the USA limits its influence to the two Americas. This does not mean that Eurasia should at the same time refuse to destabilize the Latin America world by seeking to remove certain regions from American control. All levels of geopolitical pressure on the United States must be activated simultaneously.
Yeah, I've seen that quote. I don't know if I've seen as long as you just read it there, but I've seen that. When I hear of isolationists, for the first person I think of is Ron Paul and the Libertarians, who, got a huge boost from InfoWars and Alex Jones, throughout his political career also. And then now the current leader, Dave Smith, another one that's, always doing the pro-Russia line and was shilling for Trump before the election and is doing the anti-Zionist thing. A Jewish comedian, Dave Smith, right? That's another one. Should be mentioned
yes.
Amongst these types.
Yeah, and Ron Paul was also at this Rage Against the War Machine rally. And yeah, I mean...
And had a show on RT. Didn't he have a show on RT also?
That is correct, yeah. And his... the president, I believe, of his foundation is Daniel McAdams, who was also the founder of dailyputin.wordpress.com.
Yeah,
which was one of his very first ventures.
Yeah, his co-host.
Yep.
It's here. I wanted to share this too. Look at this. It's interesting. Look at where Colonel McGregor's son is hanging out. Did you see this? Who was a co-host with Blonde and Dave Riley on The Backlash? Who also they interviewed Dugin as well. They had Dugin on.
Yeah, his son is also a contributor of RT, actually.
He's in the Donbass. Occupied Ukraine, Donbass.
And look how proud they are, liberating the Ukrainian people, huh? It's always funny how they twist these things. When they steal Ukrainian children, they claim that they're saving the children, right? When they're bombing Donbass, they say they're liberating the Russian-speaking Ukrainians, even though almost all Ukrainians speak Russian, but okay. Even Zelensky himself.
Mm-hmm. You know what blows my mind? I've seen these clips. I think Brandon Martinez posted them. Old clips of Putin saying that they're never going to invade Ukraine. That's preposterous. They don't want Crimea. That's all lies, right? You've probably seen the clip. And then also a clip of him saying like the position was that, Ukraine can join NATO. That's not a problem. They're a sovereign nation. They can do what I want. Is that true? You seen those clips? I should pull them up if I'm going to mention them, but I don't have them at the ready actually right now. I played them before on the show, but it's just crazy to me how I'm sorry, I'm rambling. Go ahead. What are your thoughts on those clips? You've seen them, right?
The NATO expansion thing is, I think, one, if not the most popular or common talking point when it comes to justifying the invasion of Ukraine. And this was very much popularized by Jeffrey Sachs, actually. And Jeffrey Sachs, that clip where he was talking about this, was, of course, reposted by Elon Musk and got like 30 million views. And now 30 million people think that Russia is completely justified in invading Ukraine. Which is funny because Putin has said multiple times that, that's Ukraine and NATO's business if Ukraine wants to join NATO or not. And even, what's his name again? This, let me have a look here. So, the former Russian president, I don't know why I can't remember his name right now, but yeah, he actually said himself that was not true, that that Russia never had any such agreements with NATO. And they also said that if or if NATO wouldn't be expanding eastward, if that wasn't allowed, then why did they allow, for example, Finland to join NATO? Or why do they why did they even allow back then East Germany to join NATO, which is also expanding eastward? Like, it's not like NATO is expanding eastward through any kind of violence or force. I mean, people join voluntarily, mostly because they want to be protected against Russian aggression.
Here's the clip. I found it. Let's watch.
Что касается расширения НАТО в целом, вы наши
As for NATO expansion in general,
отношение к этому вопросу
our position on this issue remains unchanged.
не меняется.
This is 2002. Ukraine is a sovereign state and has the right to choose
Путь обеспечения своей
its own path to ensure its security.
Не вижу здесь ничего.
I do not see anything special here or anything that could
такого, что омрачало бы отношения
overshadow the relation between Russia and Ukraine.
между Россией и Украиной.
Is this before Dugin got in his ear? Because Dugin sure seems to want to take Ukraine and have Putin rule forever.
Oh, absolutely. Although I do think, I was thinking of Mikhail Gorbachev early. He was the one who said that this was a complete lie. NATO has never promised anything of the sort. But I think with Dugin, I do think he's extremely important to keep an eye on. But I think he's more of a reflection of Kremlin policy than the other way around.
Yeah, they always straw man and they go like, Putin doesn't have any influence in Russia. What are you talking about? He's just some wackadoo philosopher or something. But we're not arguing that, he's on the phone with Putin every day or that he, secretly controls Putin in Russia. It's his clearly targeted towards the West, rallying constant anti-Western smear campaign and propaganda and propping up chaos on both sides and disinfo and Kabbalistic narratives, and it is permeating and spreading and very influential amongst factions, in politics and on the internet.
Yeah, and it's funny because Dugin really got a popularity boost after his daughter was blown up.
Yeah, I mean, he's been on Tucker also. Tucker had him on.
Yeah, and the thing about that also is that, there are some people, this is, maybe a little tinfoil hat for some, but he always talks about, all these mystical things about the power of sacrificing your own daughter and your virgin daughter and stuff, and how that would make way for a Messiah even. He wrote once in an article. And then he talks about a Bible quote. Now, I don't remember exactly what it was, but I do know that at her funeral, he stated exactly the same quote, which is really odd to me. And considering, he is quite involved in mysticism, it could very well be that they pretended that his daughter is dead. I don't know if that's true. To gain popularity, to inject him more into the right wing in the West, so that he could influence Kremlin policy and normalize it in the right wing in our hemisphere.
I had never thought of that. That was a false flag, huh?
Maybe. I don't know.
I mean, we never got any proof that she was actually in the car, right? They just turned on the camera and the car was on fire. Not that they would have the camera out before it blew up, though. You wouldn't expect them to have it on before it blew up.
Yeah, and all the evidence they put out immediately were like IDs of, falsified IDs that were absolutely fake. There were like all kinds of markings of very bad Photoshop editing. And, immediately blaming Ukraine, of course, right? And yeah, like I said, this really gave him a popularity boost. I remember seeing this graph of when his name is most searched on Google. When this happened, it spiked like crazy.
Yeah. Also, like if we're told that like he's irrelevant and doesn't have any influence, and we're crazy to notice him or talk about him at all, like but people are willing to try to assassinate him and do car bombs on him. If he's some nobody that's irrelevant, why are they doing that?
Yeah, exactly. And I always, I think you as well, I'm always very cautious with people who have Aleksandr Dugin on. And, I'm not even talking about guilty by association necessarily, but Dugin is not going to be on your show unless he knows you're just going to let him, prattle on, and you're not going to give him a hard time. Even kiss his ass like Stu Peters did. He's not going to be on your show. He's not going to talk to me, right? So why is he talking to these people?
Yeah, I've never seen him have like a hostile back and forth or a debate or anything with anybody, pushing back. I've seen just a bunch of crazy clips of him talking about arming the world with nukes and pointing them at the West and seething every single day about how evil Western civilization is.
Every day, nonstop. And he has 19,000 Substack subscribers, paying subscribers, I believe. Which is funny because isn't he sanctioned by the U.S.? Why does he get money?
That's a good question. Is he sanctioned by the U.S.? I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he has been for a very long time.
So this new guy, Professor Zhang, says Dugin is the world's greatest geopolitical strategist.
Well, I mean, in a way, he kind of is, because it seems that everything that he said in his book in '97 has come true so far, including Brexit.
Look, people might have thought, oh, Adam, you're just being tinfoil hat. Predictive history in December 2025, he talks about Pax Judaica, and I was like, Dugin calls it Pax Judaica too. That's who also is using that term. It turns out, yeah, he did get it from Dugin, probably. Look at this one.
Please, is that there is a geopolitical theorist named Aleksandr Dugin who's turned this eschatology into a master plan for Vladimir Putin to implement. If you don't know who Aleksandr...
So I say the eschatology is just a Jewish plan that is a script that's being followed, and that Russia is playing their role as the Christian, anti-Western, traditional Christians in this. Not that it's but he's kind of right here that they are utilizing the prophecies. Dugin is clearly like, have you seen Dune, the Bene Gesserit, how they plant different messianic prophecies and scriptures on Dune, and then they all waiting for the Messiah? Like, I feel like that's what they're doing, and Dugin's clearly inciting it and egging it on all, like the Christians, the rabbis, the Muslims. He's trying to rile them all up for some anti-Western apocalyptic wars.
It sure seems like it, yeah. Yeah, I mean, like we said earlier, they definitely have the same goal. I mean, Russia wants to have a multipolar world, and the Israelis seem to want to have the same thing.
Hold on, Jeff. Hold on.
Putin was raised by them, and Zelensky is a Jew himself. So which one is it? Both of them are real, elected leaders, or it's another dog and pony show?
I missed that whole thing, Zionist cuck. He talked about Chabad influence in Russia and Ukraine, I think is what it was. Hold on, I'll have to pull that up again. We'll play it after this clip, and we'll go through that answer.
Implement. If you don't know who Aleksandr Dugin is, you have to watch his interviews. You have to read his books, because he's probably the most important geostrategic thinker we have today. I'm going to put his videos and his books in the...
Like, really? He's calling us Baal, a Baal Epstein nation, as if we have a Baal problem. He's calling us Satanists when the people running our country are not satanic demon worshipers. They believe in Yahweh.
I have a feeling this guy might be the CCP's Dugin or something.
Oh, he's extremely anti-Western, too. There's this video I saw this weekend of him talking about how he was in Canada and he racially profiled by the lifeguards, by the evil white lifeguards, and he sued them for racism because they called the cops because he was beating his kids so bad. He was disturbing the other people at the water park. And you could just tell.
Chinese.
Well, that's what they said. They're like, oh, it's your culture or something. But he was suing and wouldn't give up. And you could just tell that the anti-white, anti-Western hatred was just, going mask off with it. So it's no wonder he's demoralizing and creating all this stupid conspiracies about the West and in love with Dugin.
Yes, I mean, another connection here with Dugin, and I'm sure you've heard a lot of people now are talking about Steve Bannon in the Epstein files, and how Steve Bannon was actually meeting with Dugin and stuff quite a while back, not long before Dugin became actually very popular. Well, Steve Bannon had a show with a CCP affiliated guy once, too.
You said a guy once? You said a guy once too?
A CCP affiliated guy.
Okay, got you. Sorry.
Yeah.
Below. So please make sure you spend the time to actually research him, because so much of what he says helps us understand the world as it is today and how the world will develop over time. So
that's sort of true. If you don't understand Dugin, you're missing a key piece in what's going on in the discourse in the geopolitics. He's not wrong there.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. That's why, when I still did my weekly stream, I featured Dugin almost every week, because it is really important to keep an eye on what he's saying, because like I said, he may not be influencing Kremlin policy, but I think he is a reflection of it.
Yeah, I meant to ask you that too. Are you not doing your show on the regular anymore? What's the status of the show? Because I used to see your clips pretty often on the timeline for a while, and I was enjoying them. So what's going on?
Well, I'll be back soon, I'm sure.
Cool. And where can they follow you? Where's your main streaming spot?
Currently, the best place would be on X, because I'm sure I'm going to make clips of this show as well and put them on there. So that's at Western_allies. And I'm thinking of, instead of doing weekly streams, perhaps making, more researched YouTube videos, if I can get away with it.
Yeah, I was wondering if you were on YouTube. Do you have a channel on YouTube?
No, yeah, but I am considering it, yeah.
So here is something I wanted to show. A clip of Dugin recently. See, 188,000 views. Dugin names the influencers he makes clear are quote-unquote useful to the Russian influence ops he's running. Tucker, Candace Jones, Judge Napolitano, Larry Johnson, Jackson Hinkle, Kim.com. I'm not familiar with this. This must be a different Larry Johnson or something.
Yeah, he's a writer, I believe. Kim.com is the mega upload guy, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah,
he said something like Ukraine is done or something.
Oh, dude, he's such a Putin shill.
Yes.
Hence, they're radical and system. United States is on the edge of the radical collapse. So that is superpower, hyperpower that is collapsing. That is agony of it.
And he loves it.
We need to understand that well. We should not be hypnotized by the real situation in the United States. They are in very, very bad situation. And hence, they're radical and extremist actions. So they have the problem with Epstein elite. They have the problem with economy. They have the great problem with the state of the moral United States. This is decaying society in the last stage of decay. So we need to follow that. We need to understand that. We need to study it. We need to have the correct, realistic understanding of what is going on in the United States of America outside of their propaganda, and maybe outside of our own propaganda. So we need to.
What did he say? Follow our own propaganda?
Yeah, he said something like that in an interview, I think already like 10 years ago, about, all truth is subjective. We have our special Russian truth. Right.
Yeah, he's like, listen to Russian propaganda, not your own propaganda.
Of course, yeah.
You have a very correct, realistic understanding of American society, because from that depends almost.
Yeah, a realistic understanding of America. We're all Epstein and worshiping Baal and the Antichrist. Like, is that what he means? That's what he always says.
It sure sounds like it, yeah.
That's really realistic.
Everything in the world. So we need to to try
materialistic and atheistic. He'll also say he had a tweet I covered recently too. He's blaming America. He's like, they're not Christian anymore. They're materialistic and atheistic. Like, that's the problem with America. That's why we have such a Zionist influence, is the atheist. It's like how this is another talking point. They'll say Israel's not even Judaism. It has Tucker and Mersheimer. We haven't mentioned Mersheimer yet too. He's another one that's right in with all these guys, right? John Mersheimer was on with Tucker, and they're like, ADL, APEC, they're not Jewish. You know, some Jews don't support Israel, so Israel's not Jewish. They're secular, atheist, white European Khazars, and Netanyahu's not Jewish enough. He doesn't even wear a kippah. He's from Poland. He speaks Polish. His name's Milikowski. This isn't even a Jew thing. This is a white people, European thing, right? Is that not the narrative always? Deflecting?
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, that goes back to what we said earlier, right? Always trying to portray as if Israel is a satellite state of the U.S. and everything that Israel does, the real people to blame for what they do is, of course, everyone in the West, especially the U.S.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, you think he's going to name all his favorites here in a second.
People of real MAGA, or the core MAGA, who share with us our general ideological, geopolitical, metaphysical vision of multipolarity. Because the MAGA accepted multipolarity. Trump has betrayed MAGA and has thrown away multipolarity.
So that's interesting, because I was going to say that. I had it noted down, like, if Dugin's promoting isolationism, Trump's not being an isolationist. Maybe with Ukraine a little bit, but in general, he's nation building. He's policing the world. He's not being isolationist. So that's why he says he's betrayed MAGA. And so he convinced MAGA and all his favorites to, pull out of Ukraine. And hold on. Anyway, that's interesting. Oh, and I just found this too. Look, E. Michael Jones, who just...
That's a bit of the purpose of that is probably demoralization or something. Like, I wouldn't even want the U.S. to be isolationist. I want them to fully back Europe and vice versa, which Europe did, by the way, during 9/11, for example, as well. Despite perhaps not for the right reasons, but they certainly did. And, Trump, before he got elected, was constantly saying, like, oh, yeah, I'm going to blow those domes off of Putin's freaking head and stuff like that. I'm going to hit him in the middle of freaking Moscow. Well, where is it? I'm seeing the exact opposite, unfortunately.
Did he say that? I don't remember Trump saying that. I remember Trump saying, like, that Putin's killing lots of people and he's a madman. It's crazy how they were all Alex Jones when everybody was calling Zelensky a dictator, and Trump called Zelensky a dictator, but they're not calling Putin a dictator. It's just wild. But Chet, we'll go back to the Dugin clip in a second, but I just found this real quick. E. Michael Jones, June 2025, he says, what happens now is the collapse of the American empire and the disappearance of the state of Israel. Yeah, Israel's totally, as if the plan isn't America collapses and Israel rises up, part of the multipolar world. Dugin wants his diary back, I said. Oh, look, I tagged you even on this one. Oh, no, I shared... Oh, exactly.
Yes. Yeah, I remember responding to this one. Yeah, he was at a conference with Dugin. And of course, Dugin always says the American empire. That's such a talking point that he always uses. So
this looks like a Russian Orthodox and a Catholic here too. And there's
some
Giraldi from Un's Review, right? Isn't he on Un's Review?
I believe so, yeah.
What's your take on Nick? Because Nick was doing Russia-China propaganda. I was accusing him of being a Duginist. He was even saying he agrees with Dugin's multipolar stuff just a few years ago. But recently he seems to have taken a turn and is calling out, Russia shills and even naming Dugin and stuff. What's your take on that?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I really hope that he keeps on this track, because I know he's somewhat close with Richard Spencer, who also kind of like, he would be the first one to admit that he was wrong about Russia. Russia is our friend thing that he was doing at Charlottesville, because, he had this Russian wife who was translating for Dugin, of course. But yeah, I mean, Nick has said some very questionable things. I mean, it is possible that he just didn't know any better and that now he realizes that he was wrong and he's going to move towards a more actual America first way of thinking. At least I sure hope so, because we really need more people with larger followings on our side to actually understand the geopolitical role that America has. You know, I know I sound like Dugin right now, but you know, it is kind of true. I mean,
I noticed RT is still RT is still posting a lot of clips of like Nick and Alex Jones recently.
I noticed, about the Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that kind of plays into sowing chaos in just the political realm of the entirety of the U.S. They always like to pin, it's the Democrats, it's the Republicans kind of thing, right?
Well, it's creating a divide within, it's fracturing MAGA and, Republicans is also why they would want to amplify that. Just like they were amplifying the Charlie Kirk truther stuff and Candace Owens all the time. And Alex Jones, and now they're doing the beef jerky and the ball worship. They're promoting all that shit as well, and they got the Iranians burning the Baal effigy, which is just absolutely retarded because Jews don't worship Baal, they worship Yahweh. So it's just like they're just getting everything wrong. It's like perfect textbook discrediting, like controlled opposition. Through one side's Israel, the other side's Russia, and they're moving towards the same. They complement each other and work together to like bring down the West and just like subvert everything.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Nick in the past, he has said that Stalin was his hero, called him a man of steel. And, I know people say he's a bit of a troll, which, I suppose he is. But he has got quite the explanation as to why Stalin is his hero, while also, alluding to that he didn't believe that the Holodomor happened, right? I mean, imagine if I would say that Xi Jinping is my hero, a man of steel, and then I would continue to explain how he turned China completely around and turned into this global superpower in just 20 years, and then deny that the Chinese communists murdered millions of Chinese citizens. I mean, would that still sound like a joke? I don't think so. He also said that I would any day of the fucking week have America become a communist country full on Stalinism, although that does sound a bit like a joke to me. But, you do have to be kind of careful with what you say, even when it's jokingly, I guess. He also said that China would do a lot better at running the U.S. than we do, and that did not sound like a joke. Because I'm pretty sure he said it to Hazaldin, who is a very much a pro-China guy, of course. He's part of the American Communist Party.
Yeah, with Jackson Hinkle. Well, that's another part about the Nick thing, is I've noticed since he has done this turn, and same thing with Spencer, the treatment that they've been getting from the Knots Bowls and the Unz reviews and Tucker and Candace and like all of them. It's like all the pro-Russia sphere has, Zhang now is calling Nick a Fed as well. It's like all of the Russian sphere does seem to, be talking a whole lot of shit about Nick and Spencer.
Well, that's how you know they're doing something right, so keep it up.
Yeah. And me, I get attacked by these people and slandered all the time, as I'm sure you've seen. And I'm sure after this show, there'll probably be some attacks also.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the largest following, but I've been called a Jew many times. I've been called an Israeli apologist for not talking about Israel enough. Like, I've made a 6.5-hour video compilation on Israel, all the false flag that they have been behind, all kinds of Mossad operations. I am very aware of what Israel has done to
everybody
us.
It's gone mainstream. Everybody's talking about it now. The most popular viral videos on every big tech platform is anti-Israel, anti-Jewish stuff, mostly from the Christian or even Nazi perspectives. So it's not like that cat's out of the bag, and I think it's being allowed to flourish and boosted and botted and astroturfed in a controlled manner that's going to just, lead to our destruction ultimately.
Yeah, so now we need to push it one step further and make people understand that Israel and Russia are allies. And, the Russian sort of sphere of influence in the world, Dugin talks about, the influence that the US dollar has, which is true. But Russia has a lot of military alliances with a lot of countries. And they have so many of these puppet governments And they are going to continue doing this. And we need really to push people into that direction, that we need to call out Israel, we need to call out Russia, we need to look further into CCP infiltration of the US, which Trevor Lawton, for example, does a great job at this, something that I personally can work on a little bit, I must admit. But we really need to go a step further, because only focusing on Israel while letting all other enemies just roam free and infiltrate the US at every other turn is not a winning strategy.
I agree. Okay, let's hear the rest of here from Dugin, who's just so painful to listen to. I don't know who actually likes this guy or thing. It's a torture to listen to him.
To multipolarity. So, but not MAGA. So we need to follow people like Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Alex Jones, Andrew Neapolitano, Larry Johnson, Jackson Hinkle, and great, absolutely great Kim.com that we should invite next time for our conference. He is very great. So we need to...
Alex Jones and Jeffrey Sachs and I think Syrian Girl, Jackson Hinkle, they've all been to his conferences also.
Oh, yes. And George Galloway and even Elon Musk's father.
Yeah.
To reach to these non-conformist MAGA people in the United States who have a very similar vision of what are the real priority to save America, to save the world, to save the West, to save the East, and so on. So we have immense amount of our friends in the United States of America. MAGA movement has made a rise of them. They help to them to reappear and to become important influencers, important power inside of American society. Now,
wow,
they are leading.
Dude, what an honor, huh, to be listed as one of Dugin's angels. You like the title too? These are Dugin's angels.
Yeah, that is a good title, yeah. I mean, he's just flat out admitting what they're doing. And he's only mentioning like the absolute most obvious ones. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But there are so many more. And what an embarrassment to have this guy call you by your name, praising you as some kind of American hero.
So that is very important. So, but
I mean, just look at the people that Tucker Carlson has on. I mean, he had Douglas McGregor on 2 days ago or something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He had that one like really small account, girl with brown hair, and Candace was reading her tweet about Erica Kirk, and she's like a huge pro Putin shill as well. She came up out of nowhere. She had no following. He had her on. I'm forgetting about somebody else I just had on the tip of my. He had Dugin on clearly. Alex Jones, Ian Carroll. Okay, let's see. What else do we have here? Oh, we are at 12:32. I gotta get going here. What was I gonna say? What's with all these guys saying, sharing fake AI videos, sharing old videos, acting like Israel's going down and Iran's going to win and America's going to fail? What do you think all of that rhetoric is about?
Yeah, that's a good question. Probably to, once again, demonize Israel because it's connected to the U.S.
It's like them lying online about Iran winning isn't going to make Israel lose. If Americans think that Israel's getting pummeled, they're just going to be like, support them more. Or if they think Israel's losing or we're losing, they're going to be like, we're losing, pull out, give it up. Is that the strategy or the angle? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really problematic to me that the U.S., I mean, of course, everyone knows this, but the whole thing with this blind support for Israel without ever giving a good reason why we should, except for, it's the promised land or whatever. But, at least make it like, okay, we want to have dominance over the Suez Canal or something. That's why we also give foreign aid to Egypt, which the U.S. does for that very reason. Mm-hmm. But they never give any decent reason why they would support Israel, even though, to be fair, potentially there could be good reasons. Having a foothold in the Middle East is geopolitically advantageous, but not if it's a country that screws you over at every single turn and you just let them get away with it every single time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And of course, these guys are, happy that Israel is being bombed or whatever, even though they're fake videos, because it kind of reiterates the thing that Israel completely dominates the US. And if that breaks free, then the US is free of any foreign influence, which is just, again, not true. There's a lot of foreign influence happening, right? We spoke of QAnon earlier.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't just Israel doing that. There's also, Russia is also heavily involved in that. Like I said, CCP is heavily involved in all kinds of flipping states is what they're mostly trying to do. To turn every state blue. That's, again, something, check out Trevor Lawden's work. He knows a lot about this. So, I think that's the reason why they do it.
Dugin writes, Epstein revelation is the mystery of iniquity. The eschatological role of the Western civilization now is obvious. It is the kingdom of Antichrist, the red Babylonian whore. No excuse anymore, no uncertainty. Dude, that's so crazy. So you're saying that Jewish prophecies, America, the Edom, the West, has an eschatological role.
Yeah,
and that we're evil and we need to be destroyed, really?
Yeah, I know you've talked about this whole Amalek thing a lot. And it's actually funny, here in the Netherlands, in The Hague, there is a Holocaust remembrance thing which says that exact Bible quote, actually. Like, don't forget what Amalek did to you, or never forget is what it says.
He called the West Amalek the other day in a tweet.
Yeah, he did.
Here's Trevor Loudon, you just mentioned a minute ago here.
Dugin
says, Russia must crush Ukraine to confront America's pedophilic civilization of Baal. Come on, dude. Trying to take Epstein to just claim the whole country is evil and has a blood guilt by association. It's like, clearly these guys are going to want to amplify and exaggerate and embellish things to try to use it as a smear against the West.
I mean, they always do this, right? They are the ones who were obviously involved with Epstein, and so was Israel. Mm-hmm. And then they just blame it all on the West. Mm-hmm. Like, you see all a bunch of pedophiles, and they do the same with LGBTQ, of course, and wokeism in general. They heavily promote it in the West. And then every month you see this headline that Putin bans LGBTQ in Russia, which isn't even true.
Yeah. Putin bans Satanism in Russia. That's their whole messaging, is like, from RT to the government officials, it's like, we're fighting a war against the Satanist. And we're fighting for Christ. And they have remember the war propaganda video where it has the Muslims and the Christians all doing their prayers going into war, their holy war? Dude, did you see my video where I played America war propaganda is citing Bible verses and praying to God, the God of the Bible. Ukraine, same thing. Russia, same thing. Dude, they are pinning us against each other, dividing us through these religions. And this, you're the Satanist. No, you are. You're the Antichrist. No, you are. We're the real Christian. We're the true Israel. Like, it's such a clown show. It's so kosher. It's all Judeo paradigm, dude. If Christianity and the Russian Orthodox Church and Chabad is like leading in Ukraine and Russia and America and Tel Aviv, it's just like, it's all so kosher.
Yeah, exactly.
What else can I say?
And then all these people, all these people like Candace Owens are like, how can I support Ukraine when, Zelensky bans all the Christian churches and stuff, or bans Christianity, they even say, which is really not true. I mean, they banned the Russian Orthodox Church specifically because it's heavily controlled by Kirill, who you put your face on there.
Dude, I'm the next one, bro. This is my destiny right here. I'm going to assume the role of patriarch. It's got aura, dude. No wonder they wear these cool Bene Gesserit hats.
Well, you will be a billionaire and wear all kinds of watches that will be photoshopped out of photos like they do with Kirill. And it's funny because if the Pope would do something like that, everyone would be all over it.
Yeah, FSB, KGB agent.
Oh,
Was it one of
absolutely.
them called the Songbird? Is that's popping in my head? One of the former patriarchs was called the Songbird because he would sing about all the stuff within the church, the KGB approved church.
That could be. I'm not aware of that.
Okay, I thought maybe it'd ring a bell. Anyway, the beef jerky, the cannibalism. Putin's like they're filling their belly with flesh, and then they're all promoting this beef jerky lie on the internet that beef jerky is baby meat and Pizzagate. Oh, Pizzagate was pushed through Wiki, right? Like Julian Assange, who had a show on RT and WikiLeaks stuff, and Infowars, Jack Posobiec, Mike Flynn, Liz Crokin. She's a huge Putin shill too, right? The whole Pizzagate, Seth Rich, all to help Trump get in, which he's their guy. He's the Habadnik, Likudnik, Russia, Moscow, Tel Aviv dude.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we didn't even have the time to get into that, but that is such a, we can talk for hours and hours about this, especially about Trump. It's crazy. All the money laundering schemes he has been involved in that also involved some Chabad Man of the Year, right?
Felix Sater. Yeah,
that's it. Yep.
So Trump,
Chabad
last
Man of the Year
thing.
twice.
Yeah, Florida, right? But I gotta wrap it. I'm over time, that I told you to, but I don't hear the kids knocking at the door, so we might be okay. But Trump is now sharing Kim Clement prophecy videos on his Truth Social, and I've been covering the Kim Clement prophecies since early in Trump's first term. This supposed prophet, ultra Zionist guy. I don't know if you ever seen about him or seen me cover him, but at the Mike Flynn connected Reawaken America tour, they had this guy's image at the very top of it, and the graphic was the Great Reset versus the Great Awakening.
Right.
The blue and the red.
That's another thing that Dugin and Jones together have been extremely instrumental in promoting.
Both of their books were called Great Awakening versus what is it? Great Awakening versus
Great Reset.
Great Reset, right.
Yeah, which is funny because they always talk about, the New World Order, Klaus Schwab and stuff. Klaus Schwab himself promotes the multipolar world order. Like they're clearly using some kind of Western New World Order, even though they claim that the world is already run by the West. So, that kind of leaves only one option, that the New World Order will come from the East, which is exactly what they're promoting. And
That's
Alex
a good
Jones
point.
even said, and Alex Jones, it's a complete decoy. Like they want you to focus on.
Why are we scared about a new world order if America already is a unipolar, hegemonic,
Yeah, exactly.
domination?
It makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah, if they're already in
But you
control,
don't
why
have
would
to
they
make
want a new
sense.
world order?
Yeah, the problem is you don't have to make sense. Like recently, I saw a video of a Ukrainian lieutenant, and he was talking about all these bot farms that are located in Ukraine because they need like Ukrainian IP and SIM card and stuff. So they plant these in Ukraine. So he said, we're fighting back against this disinformation all the time, but we have a great disadvantage. We're on the defensive side, which means that every time we debunk one of their lies, they've already put out 5 more, which kind of, makes it, it's a bit of a black pill because you're trying to do the right thing by being the one who's truthful, but the liars will constantly be on the offense and are unfortunately winning the information war. And, like you said, Fuentes hopefully is getting into this as well. And, with his big following, maybe we can make more of a dent. We'll see how it works out.
If he keeps getting attacked by these pro-Russia types, it's going to almost force him to a degree, but it still concerns me, the close relationship with Jones. White House is posting QAnon slogans some more. Just recently they did Patriots are in control. And then he's posting the Kim Clement thing. So these prophecies and these Zionists, like this is the Reawaken America tour, QAnon, adjacent, Mike Flynn, Mel K, who's also always on InfoWars now too. I think she's a Russian-Israeli op, if anything.
Yes.
Everything
I
the
think so,
CIA and Obama and Soros and the United Nations and the World Economic Forum, right? That's all she's ever doing. It's not Judaism. It's not Jews. It's not Zionism. It's definitely not Russia. Putin's a hero, according to her.
Yeah, Putin is on our side, and then they all start laughing, like really incredible.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she had, it's funny because she also had Kash Patel on many times, who is also a promoter of, the deep state and stuff. And he is close to Oliver Stone, who made all these dumb movies about the CIA being behind the Maidan Revolution and being responsible for the JFK assassination, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he's the FBI, the director of the FBI. And even, Dugin was promoting him all the time. Like, and Solovyev as well. He called him our boy, as in our Russian boy, right? Kash Patel.
Oh, Kash Patel. Okay, yeah. I
Yes.
missed. I lost who we were talking about. God, interesting. Yeah, Kash Patel was on Stu Peters a bunch of times too, and yeah, I don't know all that much about Kash Patel though, honestly. He's getting sued over his wife being called a Israeli Mossad agent.
I wasn't aware of that.
Elijah Schaefer. Yeah, they're suing Elijah Schaefer for $5 million for calling her a Mossad agent.
Okay. Well, I'm curious to see where that goes.
Yep. Anyway, I think we got to wrap it up. Great show. Really cool to chat with you. I've
likewise
wanted to do this for a while since I first heard of you, so it's good to finally get this done. I hope you do more content. I miss seeing the clips on the timeline. Everybody should go follow you. Again, your main platform is X. What was it? Western_Allies? Allies.
Yep. That's it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
all right,
I'm
guys.
Sure I'll be back soon.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again. We covered a lot of ground and a lot of stuff. I don't want it to be a total, I might have exhausted most of my knowledge and understanding. We did a good job, covered a lot of ground, but we can definitely do it again when some new Russia developments are come up or something.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
Cool. All right, thank you for coming on. Thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody, for watching and donating. Like, share, subscribe, comment below. Pick up the book, description below. And I will see you guys most likely tomorrow.